Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and all who are watching the Althea live Easter broadcast. This is Dr. Jonathan Ellerby. Today is a day of miracles, not only because of Easter tradition, not only because of the amazing and transformative message that is about to follow, but because through the extraordinary power of technology and the brain of our general manager, Susan Stites, we are coming to you live today with the great, the legendary Wendy Harston. So if you know Althea and Easter, then you know that for well over a decade, the Queen City Jazz Band has been a very, very important part of what we do and how we do Easter. It brings us our heart, they bring us soul, they bring us inspiration, fun, energy, movement, love, reflection, history, everything you could possibly want in a dynamic Easter service. Now, times are a little different, and my wife wasn't feeling super comfortable about 12 men and Wendy coming into our home during the quarantine. If we practice social distancing, there just wouldn't be enough space, and some of them would be outside. And considering it's snowing in Colorado today, we had to pass on that option. But Wendy was able to be patient with us and work with us to create this split screen live experience for you. And she will be joining us with 2 songs beginning in just a moment. If you've never been with us before, I'll talk a little bit more about who and what Althea is later. However, I do always warn people at the beginning of our Easter service that this is not a traditional Easter service. Our message is eclectic and universal. We like to think of it as mystical, something that is based in the consciousness of oneness for all. So we value your precious morning time, but if you're looking for a traditional Christian service, I'd say listen to Wendy, and then you probably want to go somewhere else. But if you're looking at something different, and if you're willing to open your heart and mind to a new way of being in the world today, to finding out how the Easter message itself is exactly what we are living through right now, then stay tuned. So on that note, pardon the pun, I would like to welcome dear Wendy to begin us with whatever she has in store. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Jonathan. Happy Easter, everybody. I am most definitely going to miss our brunch together today. But it's a day about transformation. And the song, Amazing Grace, was written by a slaver. He was a major slaver, and he had a revelation, a blessing, and his heart changed. And to express the change in his heart, he wrote Amazing Grace. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land, tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that brought my heart to fear, and grace my fears released. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace, grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Though we've been here 10,000 years, bright, shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. I see. I see. Thank you.
And with that blessing, I'm going to ask each and everyone watching, each and everyone listening, whether you are doing this live or later, to let your eyes close, sit comfortably but alert, and sense the presence that has been summoned through song and soul, that we each are a part of this human unfolding, the triumphs and the sorrows, the struggles and the will to live for the good of all. Drawing your breath in and down, down into the core of your being, down into your belly, then breathing out. Imagine yourself releasing all the stress of these strange days. Breathing in through the nose, down into the belly, and breathing out, really breathing out all the uncertainty, all the worry, all the fear. Imagine you are breathing to the edge of your breath and beyond. Empty yourself, that you might be filled again in through the nose, drawing in life force, drawing in spirit, and cleansing, letting go, breathing out as far as you can, so that nothing is left but grace. Trust in the unfolding consciousness, the energy of all that is. And as we settle into our own silence, each of us finding stillness within, May we sense that this silent place is where we are reunited with all beings, all those we have loved, all those we feel we have lost, all aspects of our own life and self here in this stillness, in this silence, in this moment. We sense, we affirm it is all present. And the light of God, the consciousness that is Christ, all love, all wisdom with us now. And from this place of centering, we pray, each in our own way, all voices, all hearts, all paths, all cultures, all religions and faiths, all prayers, and yet together as one. Spirit, to the one that is all, dear God, to the one pure, holy existence, we open our hearts to the world. We send love and prayers and blessings of healing and wholeness and peace for all who suffer, through this pandemic, this virus, the thousands of lives departing this world. We pray for each and all of them a peaceful journey, a beautiful journey, and gratitude for their sacrifice and the lessons we are left with. Prayers for their families and friends. Prayers for all people everywhere in isolation, aloneness, loneliness, fear, financial breakdown. We pray beyond this pandemic, but through it, the way it opens us to the suffering, the interconnection, and the compassion in our human world. And so a blessing for absolutely everyone in need. Light and love for all beings. And we pray today for our own experience of resurrection, our own personal experience of awakening to what this moment, this Easter, this moment in history is calling us towards. A new consciousness shown to us 2,000 years ago. May we awaken to wholeness, to integration, to love, and the courageous, radiant awakening of a life and a world that holds a safe place for all gender, all race, all religion, all people of all status, education, economic background, with no exception. Together, we bind in our love, and we pray for harmony in this world and with this world. Blessings for our planet, our Earth Mother, and all creatures, plants, stones, waters, all the natural elements and forces that nourish us and sustain us and teach us and keep us company and enrich and lift our spirits. Blessings for all beings everywhere. May we, through this prayer and this moment, lift our energy, lift our consciousness for the greater good of all. Amen. And in this way, in this moment, for those of us from Althea that are so sad not to be physically together on this day, remembering all the good times we've had with Wendy and the Queen City Jazz Band, all the messages we've shared, all the lunches we've shared, the classes, the courses, may we take this moment and share our simple prayer that binds us as a community of diversity, a community open to all paths, walking towards the one. But we share an honor of our ancestors, our founders, the courageous women from the late 1800s who had the awakening to this very Easter message we will share today, that Jesus, that his message, his life, his consciousness was not about one person or one tradition or one culture or church, but for all beings everywhere. In that they recognized, as he did, that God is all and that God is us. And so if you can remember, we're going to share in the Althea statement of being. God is all, both invisible and visible. One presence, one mind, one power is all. This one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. We are the individualized expression of God, and we are ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. And so with that, we invite the great Miss Wendy to bless us one more time.
In this time where we are so uncertain as to what our future is, occasionally we forget to be aware of our present. I, this fall, had catastrophic diseases, 3 surgeries, 2 major procedures, and 3 major infections in a period of 3 months.
Wow.
And survived it, and obviously, and came to view this coronavirus in a way that said to me, oh, well, God was just getting my immune system ready for this. And this song is from 1929, stock market crash, had just recently come out of a pandemic and a war. And this was a song to remind us to be here now, in a way.
Nice.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You'll find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. And won't you trade it for a package of sunshine and flowers? If you want the things you love, you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me. Every time it rains, it rains, it rains. Those pennies from heaven, don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. And won't you trade it for a package of sunshine and flowers? Oh, yeah. If you want the things you love, don't you know you must have showers? So when you hear it thunder, oh, baby, don't run under. Pennies from heaven for you and me. Don't you know the falling, there'll be pennies from heaven for you and me.
Woo! That's so great. Oh my gosh. You know, it happens every year whenever we have you, Wendy. I always just regret that we had anything else planned but listening to you. It's true.
Thank you so much.
No, I'm
Thank you,
so grateful you are well, and so grateful you are here. And I'm a little bit sad to let you go now, but gosh, thank you.
I'm sad not to be in our gathering in the church.
Yeah.
But glad to know that we can make contact still.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. We love you, and blessings for you, your family, for all the Queen City Jazz Band, and enjoy the rest of this Easter day.
Happy Easter.
All right. Take care.
God bless.
God bless. All right. So I'm going to adjust. Wendy is going to actually depart. You're just looking at me on my screen, figuring things out. Also, I have Susan on my, our general manager on my iPad in case there's any kind of crazy wild breakdown. So forgive me while I just figure this out. It's not very sacred seeming, but that's just what we have to do for Easter this year. And I apologize because I think when I did my opening prayer and blessing, the screens didn't adjust, but that's life, isn't it? So blessings and welcome again. I guess with a few pieces of paper and a tie on. For those that know me, it kind of looks like I'm about to do a newscast. But Easter has always been this very important time at Althea, which has a certain amount of irony, because if you're not new to Althea, then you know that our messages are always universal. Our culture is universal. We are not Christian or Jewish nor Hindu. We are not bound by a real philosophy, which makes us a unique community. We are bound by the shared journey of awakening, the belief that a spiritual life matters, the belief that there is more to us than just ordinary, mundane life. That in fact it isn't specifically our spiritual life, a spirit-centered life, that makes ordinary life not just manageable, but something beautiful and something amazing, and an endless process in which we can find love and wisdom and lessons even in the most difficult times, which we are certainly in right now. If you haven't been with us before and you're just joining because it's Easter, you know, the thing that I can share with you, which is not so different from what I've just said, is that, you know, Easter has obviously become a distinctly Christian tradition. And, you know, it's not unusual that well, to be honest, it's not unusual that people will come to our Easter service and leave pretty quickly at the beginning when they find out just exactly who and what we are. And certainly there will be some people that'll be disappointed that our message is not the traditional message you hear on Easter. And yet I would remind you that when Jesus lived, when Jesus walked the last days of his life and created the story, the message, the myth that is now our legacy, he wasn't Christian. And he was transcending his own Judaism through an extraordinary mysticism that he embodied, through an extraordinary magic that he embraced. And that is hard for us to remember, regardless of who we are, where we come from, that Jesus was not a Christian at the time. Jesus was not a part of a church. And that the way Jesus lived in that moment, his message was intended in his heart, in his words, for all beings. And so we explore that today. How can we see, feel, hear his words, his life, and even the interpretation of his words and life for this very moment we're in? Now, as we move into, I guess, what we would call the message, of course, it's traditional on Easter to read from the Bible. So I'm going to do that because I'm a good boy. Well, most of the time. And yet, I want to precede the reading and the message by saying that I don't know that there could be a more important day or message for the world than what we have before us today. When we move our minds and our hearts back over 2,000 years ago, we are struck by two symbols in the life and the final days, the Easter days of Christ: the crown and the cross. The crown and the cross. And for many people, it has come to signify that Christ suffered for us. And I am not here to tell you that's wrong. I'm not here to tell you to think differently, but I am here to share that there is another way to see this. That Christ didn't do this for us so that we don't have to, but instead as the most ultimate extreme example of what we are capable of when we awaken to the true spiritual nature of being. Both crown and cross signify that spiritual consciousness transcends suffering. No matter what suffering we are presented, illness, loss, financial disaster, family breakdown, trauma, abuse, addiction, no matter what we suffer, no matter what the crown of thorns, no matter what the cross to bear, the Easter story is that Christ says, I accept these because I know there is more to who I am. I know that God and I are one, and nothing can be taken from me that is ultimately real. I will demonstrate life beyond human form. And when we go deeper into these symbols, which many of us have struggled with, why a cross that seems like a locked door telling us life is suffering? Is that all we have in store? We can only hope that some greater being will take the pain from us, even though it doesn't feel like it's happening. This crown, this terrible image of a bloody crown mocking an earthly king. What could these possibly be pointing us towards more than just the fact that spirit transcends suffering? And yet, if you open your mind, if you open your heart, you can see an extraordinary kind of code, an extraordinary promise, not from Jesus, not from the Romans, but from the amazing design of human life and mind, psychology and soul. These two images from 2,000 years ago, which we were told were prophetic, we were told were redemptive, we were told foreshadowed a time of resurrection, the heart of the Easter message. And for many of us, it's all become too religious, too disconnected. But these core symbols, these sacred images, are alive in this moment as the world faces the truth of the crown. La corona, the crown. Here we have the crown bringing us together, the suffering of the crown, the coronavirus, literally the crown, looking like a crown, the actual virus looking like a thorny crown. And in the exact same way, this corona, this crown, has brought suffering and confusion and pain, people who have lost families of loved ones, places like New York, Italy, Spain, and beyond, in the Middle East, in Asia, in South America, even tribes in the Amazon, touched by this terrible crown. Even those who are not experiencing sickness, at home, alone, wondering, why this? Why me? Why take my friends? Why take my work? Why take my schooling? And we face our shadow. We face the limits of our faith. We face the pain of being human. Unless we embrace the crown as Christ. And we say, no, this is not an ending. This is not a closed door. This is not a locked door. This is a transformational gateway. This is a moment I will not miss. This is our moment to awaken to the spirit that we are through the crown and the cross. And the cross being more than this symbol of suffering, but the convergence of worlds, vertical and horizontal. As I see it, and as some of us have explored it, the masculine and the feminine must come together for us to move beyond this moment in history. The vertical and the horizontal. Community, earth, nature, ceremony, family. The horizontal consciousness of unity among beings, and the vertical consciousness of ascension, awakening, must come together. Not East versus West, not indigenous versus modern, not men versus women, gay versus straight, none of that. Convergence, integration. The final days of Christ signify our capacity, not as individuals alone, but as humanity, to integrate and transcend. Integrate and transcend the true, in my feeling, the true life lesson and legacy of Christ we are awakening to right now And when we hear the word resurrection, this is not about guilt and shame and our incompleteness. This is about our chance to be born again as individuals, families, communities, leaving this time of the terrible crown, the time of the coronavirus. We will leave our homes as something and someone new. We will greet our world again as something and someone new if we embrace the teachings and the lessons of this day and the life, the teachings, the legacy of the Master, Jesus. And so when they say, don't let his life be in vain, for me, this is what it means. Not to give your problems to him, not to look for hope and help from him, but because of him, you find the faith in yourself, not the ego self, the self that is spirit, the self that is God, the self that knows that one and all are the same. We are one family, sons and daughters of the divine. And so we have our reading. These excerpts come from John 16, and then we'll continue to explore them and return to some of these images and ideas that I've shared. So now imagine a being so united in consciousness with spirit that not only is he sensing that he can transcend the physical body, but before that already sensing, knowing that his consciousness moves in time and space. He can be where he's not. He can sense the future. He can understand the past. All realities collapse into one consciousness when we awaken to the oneness of spirit, when we know that there is no separation between who we are and what God, spirit, consciousness ultimately is. Knowing this, Jesus says to the small community that he serves at the time, but now includes each and every one hearing these words, he says, I have said these things to keep you from stumbling. They will put you out of the synagogues, just the way people today will put you out of the church for saying that Christ consciousness is within you and that you also are a child of God, that you also are one with God. He knew that. He knew that of himself, and he knew that of us today. They will put you out of the places of worship. Indeed, an hour is coming when those who kill you will think that by doing so, they are offering worship and goodness to God. And even just last night, myself, getting hateful messages through social media that this idea that Christ is for everyone, that the consciousness of Jesus is to awaken all beings to love and goodness for the dignity of all humanity, regardless of religion, gender, sex, creed. Getting hate messages from people telling me, like literally just last night, that what I'm saying when I use the words of Christ and Christianity to bring love and peace to all people is evil. And they will do this, he said, because they have not known the Father or me. But I have said these things to you so that when their hour comes, you will remember that I told you about them. And that means that as we move in this moment to quantum leap into the oneness of our true reality, we must not let our fear of releasing normal, We must not let our fear of culture, socialization, and conditioning hold us back. Open your heart to the world. I did not say these things to you from the beginning because I was with you, he goes on, but now I am going to him who sent me, to Spirit. Yet none of you asks me, where are you going? But because I have said these things to you, sorrow has filled your hearts. He's acknowledging that they're still stuck on Jesus the messenger, Jesus the divine. They're missing the fact that there is something more, that he is eternal, that we are a part of something eternal. So he's saying, look, I get it. You still think this human life is all that matters. Sorrow has filled your hearts. Nevertheless, I tell you the truth. It is to your advantage that I go away. Just as the Buddha himself said, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. The great masters have said, don't be attached to me. Don't be attached to the teaching, the temple, the Sangha, the studio, the church. Don't be attached. Let it all go, for we are only here pointing towards something greater. As it is said in Zen, just fingers pointing toward the moon, and Jesus said the same. It is to your advantage that I go, for if I do not go away, the great healer, the divine Spirit, the pure existence will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. And when Spirit comes, Spirit will prove the world wrong about sin and righteousness and judgment. Sin and righteousness and judgment. Spirit will prove the world wrong. Is this not the heart of the perennial philosophy? That judgment, control, power over, power against, one country against another, blaming, seeking power, that this is not the way forward. 2,000 years ago, he told us this. I still have many things to say to you now, but you cannot bear them now. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth. For Spirit will not speak on its own, but will speak whatever it hears, and Spirit will declare to you the things that are to come. And so it goes on. A little while, and you will no longer see me, and again a little while you will see me. Foreshadowing his conviction, his knowing in his heart that consciousness is not bound to the body. Consciousness is non-local. As we have now seen for about 50 years of conventional scientific research, consciousness is not bound to the body. It transcends time and space. And while you're home, you can find the work of Larry Dossey, Lynn McTaggart, Rupert Sheldrake, Deepak Chopra, the scientific evidence that we are not bound to the body. Then some of his disciples said to one another, what does he mean by saying to us, a little while and you will no longer see me, and again a little while and you will see me? And because I'm going to the Father? They said, what does he mean by a little while? We don't know what he's talking about. They couldn't imagine. They couldn't imagine life beyond life. They couldn't imagine that consciousness endures so wedded to their daily reality, so wedded to the limits that they know. For those of you that joined us last week, the story of the frog in the well, a creature living in one narrow reality, its whole life not even being able to conceive what might be beyond the well. Fields and flowers, trees, feasts, rivers and oceans. Very truly, I tell you, you will weep and mourn, but the world will rejoice. You will have pain, but your pain will turn into joy. You can be home, you can be quarantined, you can face loss, personal, physical, family, financial. But like the crown, like the cross, Let this be your threshold. Don't resist. Don't judge it. Don't control it. Surrender all that is to discover what remains. And Jesus goes on, when a woman is in labor, she has pain because her hour has come. But when her child is born, she no longer when her child is born, she no longer remembers the anguish because the joy of having brought about a human being into the world. And so you have pain now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice. And, and no one will take your joy from you. This is what we are told through traditions around the world. Cross through the dark night. Don't go back to normal. Don't fight for your limits. Don't trust your conditioning. Open your heart. Surrender. Be vulnerable. Allow the pain to awaken you, and you will find an unshakable love and resilience that nothing can take from you. No politics, no pain, no pandemic. So you have pain now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. On that day, you will ask nothing of me. You see, right there, even he knows what's in store for each of us if you awaken to the oneness of life. You don't need God, you don't need Jesus, you don't need religion. You only need to understand that these are paths. And so he says, I am the way. I'm the light, I'm the truth. But he doesn't say I'm the end, I'm the vehicle, I'm the Tao. Align yourself with me, and then you won't need me anymore. Transcend even me. Verily, truly, I tell you, if you ask anything of the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Until now, you have not asked for anything in my name, and you will receive. Ask and you will receive, so that your joy may be complete. His disciples said, yes, now you are speaking plainly, not in a figure of speech, which tells us in the actual Bible verses that they themselves were aware that this wasn't literal. They actually knew it then, that he was speaking metaphysically, metaphorically. They even knew then that they couldn't understand it, except to know that it's a coded language, a symbolic language, a sacred language. Now we know that you know all things and do not need to have anyone question you. By this, we believe that you came from God. And Jesus answered them, do you now believe? The hour is coming. Indeed, it has come. As our hour has come this Easter 2020, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, as we are in quarantine, each to their own home, and you will leave me alone. And so many of us forget to embrace the spirit we are, to invite God into every day of our quarantine, every day of our struggle, to see it as a journey, as the last days of Christ were a journey. We leave that to the mystics and the masters, and instead we wonder when we're going to get our next shipment from Amazon, or when we're going to get a chance to go safely buy beer again, or if we have enough snacks to get through another Netflix binge. It's all fine, but don't let it replace the opportunity for freedom. And yet, he says, even if you forget about me, your spiritual journey, your awakening to the Buddha within, to the Christ consciousness, it doesn't change the reality. He says, I am not alone because the Father is within me. We are never alone. Never alone. There's no such thing as alone in quarantine. It's an illusion of the mind. Your ancestors are with you. The angels are with you. Spirit is with you. Christ is with you. All that you call upon is with you, if you would only open your heart to see it. I have said this to you so that in me you may have peace. And in the world you may face pain and suffering, but take courage, I have conquered the world. And so this Easter message, the very words of Jesus point us towards this moment, the time of the terrible crown, the awakening of the cross, the union of worlds, that this fearless being, this fearless man, claimed a consciousness in a time beyond what anyone could imagine. Imagine this was a moment not unlike ours, in which worlds were pulling apart. The Roman Empire surrounded Christ, the most powerful empire. And yet he came from tribal people, walked the earth in simple ways, didn't seek power, didn't seek absolution, didn't seek power over, but affirmed in his simple life all that we need through the way he lived and the way he taught to embrace this great transformation now. The convergence of the realities, the vertical realities of society and religion, culture and community. God and I are one. This kind of vertical ascension of self. That the ego must be overcome. The ego must die. Everything that we think we are must be pulled away, and willingly. That person-centered journey. And even the rejection of materialism, which was in the final Easter story, when he goes into the temple and he overturns the money changers. This is the code for today. The economic disparity where we have more billionaires than ever multiplying by the year. And then we have countries, vulnerable countries like the United States, where more than 50% of the population lives in dangerous debt and can't produce income through savings in times of crisis, where we have a educational and medical system that ranks so far below so many others in the world, and yet the prosperity in this country, the trillions of dollars that are spent by the powerful, for the powerful. And there, 2,000 years ago, the very things that made us vulnerable in this moment, Christ spoke about, acted about. And yet he didn't make his home even in the Jewish temples. He visited them, he celebrated them, but his home was nature. He lived on the land. He slept on the land. He walked with his small community of followers on the land. Imagine a great master today on social media with 12 followers. You'd skip right over their page. Who is this Jesus guy? There's only 12 people following him. I'm going to go to someone else who's better at marketing and media, because 100,000, 200,000, that must be truth. He taught us, he showed us then, it's not about the numbers, it's about the purity, the consciousness. And make no mistake, he was rooted in this earth consciousness as much as he was in the transcendent. For as he embraced his final tradition as a Jewish man, the Passover Seder, with his small community, he made magic, ceremony, ritual. He didn't ostracize the indigenous mind as we do today. He knew that the alchemy of consciousness and matter was possible. And he took the bread, the matzah, he took the wine, the Seder cup, and he turned it into a communion, so as to impart a tradition, like a darshan in the Hindu tradition, like a transmission in the Buddhist tradition, and said and affirmed and planted the seed, you can awaken to the one as I have. And so ritual and ceremony were embraced. And let us not forget, as we consider this path forward, the merging of worlds, the vertical and the horizontal, the earth-based and the ascension-focused, the masculine and the feminine. That the role of the feminine, and you might extrapolate and say the female, was absolutely central to the conditions, the context that allowed Christ to blossom beyond this earthly life. When all his followers fled, it was a handful of women, two that came to him to offer comfort, to stay by his suffering side, and women who sought his body in the tomb afterwards, women who were the first to receive the message that consciousness transcends death. This is the time of the crown and the cross. This is the time of the great crossing, and everything in the life and legacy and loving heart of Jesus is what we each, in ourselves, our families, and our communities, what we need for a sustainable path forward, a sustainable world, a sustainable society where there is love for all, the willingness to embrace all, the merging of all worlds, all ways of being, in the purifying spirit of oneness. The spirit that, if we stay rooted in it, will naturally allow us to release whatever is no longer needed. And so here we are at home, watching videos instead of gathering in person, because we have arrived at the moment that has been foretold. The changing of the ages that the white buffalo calf woman taught about hundreds, 1,000 years ago. The 4 different ages of the great cosmic buffalo before a new time on earth would begin. The Kali Yugas of the Hindu tradition, the Mayan cycles of the calendar. We look all around the world, and yes, in the Bible itself. Times of resurrection ahead, and the time when Christ will come back, but not in body, in spirit, in this actual moment, the teachings, the consciousness. If you embrace this, no, when this is all over, life will not go back to normal. And thank God. Thank God. You will know things about yourself you couldn't have known otherwise. You will experience things in life and spirit you couldn't have known otherwise. And though it is a terrible time of pain and loss, it is only the acceleration of the natural cycle, for we are all dying. We are all vacillating between well and sick and rich and poor. when the soul lives through us, our evolution accelerates us. When we live as a soul, we accelerate our evolution. So slow the mind, slow the emotions, open the heart, and the soul takes flight. This is the Easter message. This is the Corona message. This is the time of the terrible crown that Christ embraced, accepted, with the absolute faith in his oneness with spirit and the briefness of his human form. This is what he wished every being to know, that we are ultimately free. What more could you want? What more could you need? But it's hard and it's scary. And of course, even back then, when push came to shove, his apostles ran for the hills. But God has been good to us, and most of us, not all of us, but most of us, we're taking refuge in this terrible time in our homes. And we do have videos to watch and snacks to eat, and that's not really the way most of the world faces hardship. What many of us are facing now as hardship is quite familiar to most of this planet. Uncertainty about the future and work, uncertainty about the education of our children, a loss of control over life because of factors beyond our control, the precariousness of health. That's life on earth. But life is also beautiful. When you find those places where people know suffering, they know joy, they know humor, they know food, they know music, they know all the things that so many of us have forgotten. This is our chance. This is our chance to remember that when we release all that we are attached to in this Christ-inspired way, when we surrender everything, even to death, we find the ultimate freedom, that we need not live by conditioning, by what we've been told, by what we think, by our emotions. We can live by spirit. And in that way, all of creation awakens around us. It becomes alive. And we are in dialogue with it, heart and soul. Truly, it is a magical world. Truly, what we see is just the tip of the iceberg. But you must make the choice. You must make the commitment from your own heart, not because you were told, not because you have nothing better to do, but because you feel the call. And Easter can be the beginning of this transformation for you, for the people you know, and for our planet. And so it's time to close. And I have a poem for you and a little blessing. The poem is from one of our regulars. Every Sunday, we at Althea, when we have our gatherings, we always have live music with extraordinary people. We always have great readings from around the world. But our favorites, Mary Oliver and David White, recur again and again. And so I'd like to close with a reading by David White and a prayer. Before I do that, I do want to thank everyone who has watched this. If you have questions, please let me know. I believe every word I've shared, and I want this for the world and for anyone who wants it for themselves. I believe that we can live sustainably with our earth and with each other, with love and compassion, and it takes time to figure it out. We are grateful for your donations. Althea can only thrive and survive if you find the impulse inside yourself to generously give. You can do it online. We have links being posted. We have other things going on through Althea Facebook Live. We have a Thursday gathering at 11 a.m. Mountain Time USA. Everyone's welcome. We have a Friday class coming up, Why the Dark Night of the Soul is Necessary to Find the Light of Life. That's a paid Zoom class. You can go on our website or check out Facebook and you'll find the links so we can go deeper into these messages, for example, like what we talked about today. And stay tuned, watch Facebook and our newsletter, because Thursday we're looking at doing an all-day retreat. So for a small group of people that want to commit, what we'll do is we'll wake up in the morning and we'll check in together early. I'll open with prayers and blessings, meditation, and some instruction. Then we'll reconvene with the 11 o'clock class. Then we'll meet again at the end of the day and close with prayers and reflections and some time together. So again, watch for that live virtual quarantine monastic celebration of solitude and contemplation, something like that. We'll be posting that for you to sign up for either later today or first thing tomorrow. Again, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing this. If you enjoyed this, it will be recorded, so then you can send it to friends. We'd like to share this, not only to grow the Althea community, not only to share what we're about, but to hopefully offer something inspiring and nurturing for someone who might be feeling at a loss in this very potent time. So, sitting comfortably but alert, I invite you to close your eyes. And we begin this closing moment with the blessing by David White. The blessing of the morning light to you. May it find you even in your invisible appearances. May you be seen to have risen from some other place you know and have known, in the darkness, and that carries all you need. May you see what is hidden in you as a place of hospitality and shadowed shelter. May that hidden darkness be your gift to give. May you hold that shadow to the light and the silence of that shelter to the word of the light. May you join all of your previous disappearances with this new appearance, this new morning, this being seen again, new and newly alive. Thank you, David White. And so, each in our own way, we draw into the center, heart of hearts. And we feel a prayer moving through us, each in our own way, and yet as one for the still point, that Christ consciousness, that which Jesus awoke to and tried with all his life to share, to embody, to demonstrate. From that center point, we pray as one. Spirit, to the pure existence, the one that is all. Dear God, angels, ancestors, grandmothers, grandfathers, Mother Earth, to all the masters and beloved Christ. Help us. Have mercy on us, that we might release our fearful clinging to the world outside us, to what we thought we wanted, to who we thought we are and were, that we might awaken to the world within. Guide us when we're fearful and confused. Remind us when we grow distant and selfish. Nurture us when we are afraid and feeling broken. Only together will we awaken to the world long promised to us all. Not perfect, not without problems, not without flaws or struggles, but perfected in our alignment with the One, that we might live as spirit, as nature, as lovers, as parents of each other and all things. Help us to let this time of convergence of the worlds, the up and the down, within and without, the power of the cross, may we awaken to that new consciousness today and never let it go. May we face this time of the terrible crown, the crown of thorns, the corona virus, and all that plagues us in all communities, everywhere, and fearlessly move forward with love, willingness to learn, to let go, and to allow the Spirit that is life and beyond to live through us. May we be nourished in body, mind, and spirit. And may we be grateful, yes, grateful today for each other, for this life and whatever portion of it we have, for hope, for the beauty of the human condition, the beauty of our natural world, the beauty of spirit. May we be grateful for all that we have ever loved and learned. May we be grateful today for the opportunity to be born again and again and again. May we be grateful for the loving wisdom, the life and the legacy of Jesus, that awakens today. Prayers of hope and healing for all beings everywhere. And unity, harmony in the oneness of life. Amen. Well, I'm going to sign out, folks. I got to figure out how to do that. Exit full screen. That's a great way to end a powerful prayer, isn't it? Thank you, one and all. I love you, whoever you are, even if you're hating me for this message, as some will. Let our love not be conditional, and let our work be unceasing and joyful for what we are creating together at Althea and with whoever is listening, watching. It is something more magnificent than perhaps what the world has ever seen. And don't let anything distract you from that. And so, goodbye for now. I love you. Happy Easter.